Hello, I'm Steve Lusk with the Red Bank Church of Christ in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and I'm here to share with you today the devotional thought from our His Life devotional book for Monday, the 5th day of October, 2020. All this year we've been studying the life of Jesus in order to strive to become more and more like Him. As His followers, we want to imitate His life. And so this series of devotionals has been most helpful for us in finding out more and more about Jesus, His teachings, His life, His miracles, His interactions with people. For the last few weeks, we've been looking at the Sermon on the Mount, and we've looked at it in some detail. It's been a great study. But this week, we're going to move into some miracles that Jesus performed as recorded by Matthew, Mark, and Luke, the so-called synoptic gospels. They're all very similar in the stories that they tell about Jesus, often told from different perspectives, however. In Matthew chapter 8, immediately after the Sermon on the Mount, the Bible tells us that, as you see here from the text, Jesus came down from the mountain and great crowds were following him. A leper came to him and knelt before him, saying, "Lord, if you will, you can make me clean." Jesus stretched out his hand and touched him, saying, "I will be clean." And immediately his leprosy was cleansed. And Jesus said to him, "See that you say nothing to anyone, but go, show yourself to the priest and offer the gift that Moses commanded for a proof to them." Now, as we look at this particular passage, there's several things that stand out to me. First of all, Jesus has just left what the Bible calls a multitude of people. We have no way of knowing how many people were involved in this crowd that gathered there for the so-called Sermon on the Mount, but it was a large number of people. And now as he leaves the mountain, this one individual, this leper, comes to him. Now remember, in New Testament times and often throughout the ages, lepers were considered not only unclean, but were to be completely avoided. We talk today about social distancing because of the pandemic that we happen to be in here in 2020, the coronavirus pandemic. And certainly it's important that we do maintain social distancing in certain settings and protect ourselves with hand washing and masks and so forth. But I think it would be safe to say that you could multiply that exponentially and kind of get a feel for what it was like to be living in the first century when there were lepers around. So the very fact that Jesus allowed this leper to approach him and kneel before him is fairly significant in and of itself. Jesus did not show favoritism or partiality toward anyone based on their gender or their age or their status in life, and certainly not their health. In fact, the Bible records that often Jesus touched lepers, which in many instances would have been considered almost a death sentence and would have made him ceremonially unclean. But Jesus was able to reach out and touch them. And in this particular case, he allowed this leper to approach him. Another thing that stands out to me is Jesus' willingness to pay attention to the one right after having dealt with multitudes of people. You know, every single individual was significant to Jesus. We often see Jesus approaching one person or dealing with one person. We sometimes see him dealing with large groups of people or even smaller groups of people, like when the 12 were often with him and asking him questions. But Jesus was concerned about every single individual. In fact, in Luke chapter 15, the three parables that Jesus tells us, recorded by Luke, about the lost sheep and the lost coin and the lost boy, among all the lessons that we can learn from those parables, one of those is the value of one. Every single one is so very important. And we see that in this story as well. And then another thing that stands out to me about this story is the fact that once this leper was cleansed of his leprosy, Jesus tells him, "You follow the commandments in the law of Moses," which included to go and offer a gift to at the temple to show themselves to the priest so that they could become ceremonially clean in order to go and offer sacrifices and do other things that they would have done in the temple grounds. Before this, while they were infected with leprosy, they would not have been allowed in to defile the temple. And so what stands out to me about that is that Jesus was concerned about keeping the law. You remember, in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus said, I have not come to destroy the law, but to fulfill it. And so Jesus kept the law perfectly while he was here upon earth as the fulfillment of the law. And then there's one more obvious elephant in the room that it stands out about this story, and that is Jesus healed this man. Jesus had the miraculous power from God to heal people who were lepers, who had leprosy, who were blind, who were deaf mutes, who were crippled, and even to raise the dead back to life. You see, Jesus did these things not just to demonstrate power, but to show that he was, in fact, who he claimed to be, to produce faith. In fact, when he says, go show yourself to the priest for a proof to them, yes, proof that that this leper was now ceremonially clean, but also proof that Jesus was, in fact, who he claimed to be, the Son of God. And so Jesus didn't just perform miracles willy-nilly in order to show off, but rather he did this in order to verify that he was who he claimed to be, the Son of God. So as we look at the life of Jesus, we need to remember that his life was something to imitate, that his life was something to look at and to follow. And while we may not be able to perform miracles, we certainly can pay attention to the one. We certainly can reach out and touch those who are hurting in some way that often are ostracized from other elements of society. And we certainly can do all we can to do things in accordance with God's will, like Jesus was doing in following the commandments of Moses. So let's do all we can to follow his life and to be the kind of disciples that Jesus would have us to be. If there's a need that you have that we can meet here at the Red Bank Church of Christ, please contact us and let us know. We'd love to pray for you. We'd love to help you in any way. And certainly we'd love to tell you more about his life. Thank you so much for watching today. You have a great day.